Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm going to give people one more minute to hop on and then we'll get started. So thanks for your patience. Thanks for joining us, and hang tight. I'm going to give people till 7:01 to join and then we'll get started. All right, welcome and thank you for joining us for this Saving Life on Earth webinar to learn more about the many ways we're working to end extinction. I'm Tiara Curry. I'm a senior scientist in our Saving Life on Earth campaign, and I'm joining this evening from Shawnee territory, and my pronouns are she, her. We have a lot to talk about today about what's happening with gray wolves and how you can help. So I'm going to hand it over to our speakers to introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. We've disabled chat because it can be really distracting. Put your questions into the Q&A and we'll save 20 minutes at the end to get to those. And we'll post a video of this webinar tomorrow so that you can share it with other people. We'll post it on the Center for Biological Diversity's YouTube channel and on our website. If you go to Action Events, you can find videos of all of the Saving Life on Earth webinars there. So with that, let's just jump in, and I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon. I'm Amaroq Weiss. I'm the Senior West Coast Wolf Advocate with the Center for Biological Diversity. I am joining you from the native land of the Petalumans. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a biologist and a former attorney. I've been working in wolf advocacy for almost 24 years, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you again tonight. I love when we have this opportunity to speak as a community. So thanks for being here.
Hi, my name is Andrea Zaccardi. I'm a senior attorney with the center. I've been with the center since about 2014, working on wolf issues since about 2010. And I am based in Victor in the great state of Idaho.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex Bonk. I'm the Center's digital director. I've been with the Center for about 4 years, although most of my time I've worked with the membership team. I'm up in Portland, Oregon, and I'm really excited to be in my first Saving Life on Earth webinar.
Thanks, you all. I'm excited that you're here, and I'm grateful to all of you at home for joining us. So Amaroq, let's start with you. Can you bring us up to speed on the federal wolf delisting and what's happened to wolf populations since they've been turned over to state management?
I sure can. Can you pop up that first slide so people can take a look at this beautiful wolf and consider the moment in time that we're in right now? I'll go ahead and start. So last fall, the Trump administration ordered wolves to be stripped of protections across most of the lower 48 United States. And that order went into effect in early January. States immediately enacted regulations and laws, and courts ruled in favor of hunting groups to open wolf hunting and trapping immediately or in the near future, or to greatly expand hunting and trapping in places that wolves already had lost federal protections. Immediately in Wisconsin, caravans of hunters in trucks with packs of dogs stormed the forest and ripped wolves to pieces, killing at least 20% of that state's wolf population in just 72 hours. Lawmakers in Michigan hope to do the same and hold wolf hunting seasons this fall. Idaho and Montana hope to reduce their wolf populations by 85 to 90%. So impacts of the January delisting were immediate, although the details vary from state to state. For instance, in South Dakota, they didn't even bother to institute a wolf hunting season. Instead, they simply designated wolves as predatory animals, shootable on sight, any time of day, any day of the year. And there isn't yet a wolf population in South Dakota, but wolves do wander in there occasionally from neighboring Western Great Lakes states. But that law means wolves will never be able to establish a population in South Dakota. Wisconsin already had a law on the books that said once federal delisting happened, a state wolf hunt must take place and that it would start in November. But once wolves lost protections in January, legislators raced to push the Commission for the Wildlife Agency to start a hunt right then. When the agency declined to do so, a hunting group filed a lawsuit and forced a state court to make the decision that the hunt had to start right then. And when those caravans of hunters went into the woods, they blew right through the quota, right past it for how many wolves could be killed. They ignored the treaty rights of tribes to be consulted with, tribes who view the wolf as their brother. And the wolves were killed right in the midst of their breeding season and right in the midst of the time that the agency conducts its annual wolf population survey. The January delisting even affected wolves in the Northern Rocky Mountain states, despite the fact that wolves had already been delisted there a decade ago and wolf hunting and trapping was already taken place. But the nationwide delisting seems to have emboldened the legislators in Idaho and Montana. It's almost as if they were in a contest with each other to see who could pass the most horrific laws that would greatly expand how and when and where wolves could be hunted and trapped and snared. And all the while, dozens of conservation groups and thousands of members of the public did everything they could to try to stop the hunt in Wisconsin, to try to stop the bills from getting passed, to try to stop the governors from signing those bills into law, and try to stop the state wildlife commissions from enacting the most extreme regulations to implement those laws. And at the same time, dozens of conservation groups and thousands of members of the public were trying to make contact with the Biden administration and with Secretary of the Department of Interior, Deb Haaland, to get them to act, to relist wolves under the Endangered Species Act. And then while all of this was going on, other states have also assumed wolf management authority. So for instance, in Minnesota, Michigan, and Wisconsin, right now they are or soon will be revising their existing state wolf plans. Washington is preparing a post-state delisting wolf plan, which means they're writing a plan for not only how will they manage wolves now that federal protections are gone, but come the day when they remove state protections. And then Colorado is developing a brand new wolf reintroduction plan. Now just take a moment, think about what I just said about Colorado. Because of a massive citizen organizing effort and public campaign over several years, last November, a ballot initiative was passed that requires the state to reintroduce wolves to Colorado. And some wolves have recently shown up in Colorado, but this new law means that there is now a future for wolves in Colorado. And in breaking news just this afternoon, literally like 2 hours ago, we just learned that that first wolf pack in Colorado didn't just have the 3 pups that were located in June. It's determined that they have 6 pups. So that's amazing news. And Andrea, when she speaks, is going to tell you some more really good news out of Minnesota. And then if you've been following California, you know that we now have 3 wolf packs. And any day now, state agency officials are going to announce whether they've been able to confirm if any of those 3 wolf families had pups this spring. But no matter what happens at the federal level, you can see how crucial it is that states change how they manage wolves, that we change how states manage wolves. Because even if those federal protections are restored, eventually, at some point in the future, wolves could lose those protections again. So what I'd like to do is introduce you to some brand new tools to assist you in your own state to dramatically change how wolf plans are developed at the state level and what goes into those wolf plans.
Thanks, Amaroq. And I've seen that a news article referred to some of the state plans as blueprints. So I was wondering if you could explain those and explain how they could be useful to people on this call who want to help wolves.
You bet. So these state wolf planning guides and resources were created because of the experiences of so many of us in the wolf advocacy world, year after year after year, seeing state wildlife agencies doing the damnedest things when it comes to wolf management, creating policies that don't make sense, acting on the demands of the livestock and the sports hunting industries, ignoring the best available science, disrespecting their obligations to consult with tribes due to treaty agreements, tribes that have deep cultural ties with wolves, creating public advisory groups, but then stacking them with wolf opponents, establishing recreational hunting and trapping of wolves when there's no good reason to hunt or trap wolves, and then failing to consider ethics in how we address wolves, how we treat wolves, or failing to consider that wolves have intrinsic value. So 2 editions were created, one for advocates and one for agencies. And the goal of the advocate edition is to help you understand what you're up against, to identify the key concepts that you as advocates need to fight for, and then to provide you with the published science papers, reports, and polls that you can cite to in your testimony, in your written comments, and even when you talk to your friends and family or complete strangers about wolves, you're going to have the material that supports what you're telling them about. And then the goal with the agency edition is to highlight, one more slide, please. Thanks. Is to highlight the many places where there actually is a lot of agreement between agencies and advocates, to identify the areas where agencies and advocates frequently clash, and to set the stage for us to have a dialogue together on the principles that we're proposing. So these materials are the result of 10 months of work by 5 conservation groups and an independent environmental attorney. The idea was dreamt up by the Endangered Species Coalition, who pulled this all together. And the co-authors are the Endangered Species Coalition, the Center for Biological Diversity, Humane Society of the United States, National Wolf Watcher Coalition, Wild Earth Guardians, and then environmental attorney Jody Havish-Sinekin from Wisconsin. We also have to want to share our gratitude to the people who helped review and critique these documents. Early reviews were done by other conservation groups, but also by people in academia, research scientists, ethicists, former and current state and federal agency staff, and tribal representatives as well. So where can you find these materials? Easy enough, wolfplanning.org. So if you go to that page and then you scroll down, what you will see is the Wolf Planning Guide Advocate Edition and the Wolf Planning Resource Agency Edition. And then if you scroll further down beneath the advocate version, you're going to see 3 crucial appendices. Don't miss out on those. Those talk about the perils of other state politics interfering with wolf management, how words really matter and can change the paradigm, and then also pitfalls associated with public advisory groups. Both editions, the agency and the advocate version, they both have hyperlinks to a comprehensive resource bank, 166 pages full of science and reports and surveys and in-depth discussions on all the topics that we present. It's time for agencies to change how they steward and view wolves. Instead of viewing wolves as an obstacle to overcome, to view wolves as a conservation opportunity to celebrate. And to achieve this paradigm shift, these materials ask agencies to adhere to key principles and explain why they're needed. Acknowledge the intrinsic value of wolves. Follow the best available science, and that means both Western science and traditional ecological knowledge. Respect tribal treaty rights and their cultural ties to wolves. Uphold democratic processes for inclusive public involvement. Address livestock wolf conflicts through proactive, non-lethal means instead of killing wolves. Prohibit recreational wolf hunting and trapping, and consider the ethical implications of actions on individual wolves and wolf families. Now you may ask, will any of this work? Social science informs that the majority of Americans no longer hold the traditionalist value that wildlife is here for human use. Instead, most Americans view wildlife as part of our extended social network, worthy of care and ethical consideration and having intrinsic value. State wildlife agencies frequently cater to the traditionalist values, but that's no longer their main constituency. Agencies tend to be immovable forces, and the political influences on them, the livestock industry and the sports hunting industry, those also tend to be immovable forces. It's useful to recognize that these are not people or entities who change or who change easily. But the tools we offer in these guides and these resources are the type of concentrated tools that have the best chance in creating change, in shifting the paradigm. And that's because the tools are focused, they're principled, and they're coherent. So we're very excited for you to read them, and all the co-authors look forward to your feedback and to hear about your experience in putting them to use.
Thanks, Amaroq. That is really exciting, and I hope everyone on here will check those out. I got a ton of emails this week from people who signed up for the webinar who were interested in what's going on with federal wolf delisting and if we're challenging it. So Andrea, I want to pass it over to you to tell us about the lawsuit challenging federal wolf delisting.
Great, thanks, Tira. So in November of 2020, the Trump administration removed federal Endangered Species Act protections for all gray wolves in the lower 48 states. This didn't affect Mexican wolves in the Southwest, and it didn't actually affect wolves in Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, and the eastern part of Washington and Oregon. Those had already been removed from federal protection. But it did affect a lot of wolves, especially in the Great Lakes and the Pacific Northwest. So following the passage of that law, we filed a 60-day notice of intent to sue, which is required under the Endangered Species Act, before you can file a lawsuit. And then we filed a lawsuit with allies represented by Earth Justice in January. And you can see on the screen, there's 3 lawsuits listed. All of these lawsuits have been consolidated. So it's a huge coalition effort right now. All the groups are working together on briefing and strategy to fight this rule. For the most part, our lawsuit alleges that wolves are not recovered. You know, numbers have gone up in the Great Lakes, but they're not recovered there, and they're definitely not recovered in the Pacific Northwest or other areas where they could thrive, such as Colorado and the Southern Rockies. So we wanted to move the case as quickly as possible through the courts. The initial hope was that we could get a ruling on this case before the fall hunting season started. Unfortunately, the National Rifle Association and the Safari Club successfully intervened in the case and filed what I think I can safely say was a pretty bogus motion to dismiss. But unfortunately, it took time to respond and for the court to rule upon that. The court did deny the motion to dismiss, but it backed up the briefing a little bit. So our opening brief is actually due just about a week from today on July 16th. The case will be briefed through the fall, and then there's a hearing in November on November 12th. So we're hoping that we will get a decision in the winter and before any potential spring hunts would start.
Can you tell us more about what's going on in Idaho and Montana specifically?
Yeah, you know, being from the Northern Rockies, I feel like I'm always the bearer of bad news when it comes to this. But so Idaho and Montana were both, they both experienced severe governmental overreach this spring. The legislatures passed a slew of bills aimed at reducing the wolf populations in those states. So in Idaho, the government passed a bill that could reduce the wolf population. There's about 1,500 wolves they estimate there. Could reduce the population by about 90%. Senate Bill 1211, which was signed by Governor Little, even though we had tons of advocates, probably a lot of people on this call, calling and emailing him and asking him to veto the bill. He unfortunately did not and signed it into law. So that law calls for hiring private contractors to kill wolves, allows hunters and trappers to kill in unlimited number of wolves on a single tag, and permits trapping year-round on private lands across the state. The law also allows hunters and trappers to kill wolves by a variety of means that have been used to kill coyotes or foxes in the past. So they can use hounds now to hunt down wolves. They can run them over with ATVs or snowmobiles. It's important to note that Idaho Department of Fish and Game, even though they have not been great when it comes to wolf management in Idaho, they actually didn't support this bill either. In a lot of ways, this bill really usurped their management authority. And it's pretty clear that these laws are based solely in politics and not backed by science at all. So, for example, proponents of the bill asserted that wolves were killing too many elk and, too much livestock in the state. And so they needed to lower the population. The data actually shows that wolves kill less than a fraction of 1% of all livestock in Idaho, and elk population numbers are above management objectives in most of the state. Proponents just completely ignored that science, even though it was presented to them multiple times. So those Idaho laws took effect July 1st, unfortunately, and I think it's possible that hunters and trappers are already taking advantage of their new opportunities to kill wolves here. Montana's government passed similarly far-reaching bills. So Senate Bill 314 was signed by Governor Gianforte. It recommends reducing the wolf population to just 15 breeding pairs. So that would mean approximately 85% of the wolf population that resides there currently. Recommendations include increasing or completely removing bag limits. So that's the number of wolves that an individual hunter could take, using bait to kill wolves, allowing hunters to use spotlights or night vision scopes to hunt wolves at night. A lot of these things not only endanger wolves, but also, if my dog is running, out in the woods at night and I'm with it, but somebody mistakes her for a wolf, the hunting at night just has a lot of issues that go along with it. The Montana legislature also passed bills making it mandatory that the Montana Fish and Game Commission allow some level of snaring for wolves, which is snaring is typically a wire that strangles the animal. And it expands the wolf trapping season by 4 weeks, and also provides bounties to reimburse hunters and trappers trying to kill wolves, so there are costs associated with that. So to fight back these terrible laws, the Center and allies have taken a number of legal and practical actions. The first thing we did is filed a petition with Interior and Fish and Wildlife Service requesting that they immediately restore federal Endangered Species Act protections for wolves in the Northern Rockies. We argued that federal protections should be restored on an emergency basis because hunters and trappers can kill an unlimited number of wolves, and because the bills ask that the population be reduced so quickly and so dramatically. We bolstered that petition with a follow-up letter with more than 50 organizations that signed on to support the petition. And Fish and Wildlife Service has until August 24th to respond to that petition. So far, we have not gotten a response. We additionally sent letters urging Fish and Wildlife Service to disqualify Idaho and Montana from receiving federal money to manage wildlife. So under the Pittman-Robertson Act, Idaho and Montana both and several states receive millions of dollars a year to conserve wildlife. And there's a provision in that law that says if the states are taking actions that contravene the conservation purposes of Pittman-Robertson, they shouldn't be eligible for that money. So we've sent a letter to Fish and Wildlife Service asking them to disqualify, and we're in the process of drafting a formal petition to force Fish and Wildlife Service to respond to those requests. Third, with our allies, we also recently sent a petition to the Forest Service asking that they prohibit hunting and especially trapping of wolves in wilderness areas. So under the Wilderness Act, commercial activity is generally prohibited because it degrades wilderness character. And trapping, and trapping wolves to sell their pelts is commercial. Hiring private contractors to kill wolves is commercial. And paying out bounties to kill wolves is all commercial activity. So we've argued that the Forest Service should be prohibiting trapping in those wilderness areas because it is commercial and it contravenes the purpose of the Wilderness Act. We also recently sent a notice of intent to sue Montana for expanding snaring that could harm and kill federally protected species. So if snaring takes place, for example, in habitat occupied by grizzly bears or Canada lynx, which are both federally protected under the Endangered Species Act, that would be a violation of the Endangered Species Act. So we've sent Montana a 60-day notice of intent to sue. They have 60 days to respond to that. And depending on their response, a lawsuit could imminently follow that. And just yesterday, maybe some of you saw it, we helped promote a wolf film called Family. It's a short film with tribal leaders asking Secretary Howland to relist wolves under the Endangered Species Act. And we have plans to continue promoting this film throughout the month, so keep an eye on that. This is all in addition to, we've been writing letters to the state agencies, writing comments, testifying at hearings when those opportunities are available, mobilizing our supporters, you guys, to take action and do the same, to provide comments or testimony when you can, and spreading the word about these laws widely in the media. I think it's really important that the message as to what is going on in Idaho and Montana is out there, and that these states see the outrage that we've been seeing. Amaroq and I have been getting calls and emails almost daily from, a lot of people really outraged and depressed over these laws, and we feel it and we hear it, and we want to make sure those state agencies hear from everyone as well.
Thanks, Andrea. And can you tell us some things that our members and the people on this call could do right now to help?
Yeah, so, in addition to some of the stuff that Amaroq's been talking about, we strongly encourage our members and supporters to use their voice and stand up for wolves. And a lot of times we provide what we call action alerts that we send through our listserv to anyone that's signed up for them. So we have 4 action alerts that are live right now. The first one is Wolves Need Your Voice, and it's that's asking for the administration to relist all gray wolves in the lower 48 states. The The second one is to end Idaho's federal wildlife management funding. So that's what I talked about, ending the funding that they get under the Pittman-Robertson Act. That's been live for a little while. We've actually had more than 37,000 people take action on that. So we're pretty excited to see that kind of involvement. The third is to relist the Northern Rockies wolves based on the terrible laws that have been passed in those states. And for that one, we've seen over 22,000 action takers. So that's great as well. Would love to see these numbers go up, obviously. And the fourth is just to tell your governors, reach out to your own governor and tell them that they should be speaking up in Congress and speaking to the administration to protect wolves and relist them under the Endangered Species Act. So those are the 4 action alerts we have live right now. When Alex, our digital director, talks to you, he'll tell you a little bit about how to find those. One thing you can do is just sign up on our website so you're receiving all our alerts, but he's got another new crafty idea to share with you as well. And then we have 2 more upcoming alerts. One is going out tomorrow, and it's asking our members to send Montana comments. So a lot of those Montana recommendations that I shared with you have not been passed into law yet. And there is an open comment period until July 26th. So we have an action alert so people can send their comments into Montana. And then we'll have another one later in the month on encouraging tribal consultation. If you can go back one slide, Tara. Yeah. Yeah, that one. So I want to emphasize how important your voice is, and this is one example of it. So we were recently able to turn out a lot of members and supporters to send comments. Oh, that's supposed to be Minnesota. Send comments to the Minnesota Wildlife Agency and provide testimony. And just yesterday, Minnesota announced that they will not hold a fall hunt this season. That's huge for Minnesota wolves. It's not something that we were necessarily expecting, but they saw how many people were against it and they made that decision. So your voices really, really do matter.
Thanks, Andrea, and it's so good to get even. It's good to get even a little bit of good news. Yeah, but that's great. I mean, but it's wonderful, and it's because people took action and spoke up.
Exactly.
So even though it's great to hear about the recent win in Minnesota, a lot is going on everywhere else that is just heart sickening and infuriating and depressing. And it's really important that we support each other during this time. So Amaroq, I just want to ask you how we can better support each other, how people who care about wolves can be there for each other and move things forward right now.
Yeah, really important topic. We're going through Wolf Armageddon right now. This is hellish. I know it, you know it, everybody on this webinar knows it. And just like Andrea said, I get calls and emails from people daily, nightly, on the weekend, bedtime. I'm sure I've spoken with many of you or emailed with many of you who are watching this webinar right now. So we are in this with you. We also are experiencing a lot of trauma online from what we see posted on Facebook, the news articles of what's taking place, and then the responses, the comments from people underneath that just show how much despair and grief people are feeling and how helpless they feel. And so it's times like this that it's most important to remain in solidarity with one another, but it's also times like this that when the anger and the despair just take over because there's no easy answer to solve what's happening. And there's so many groups taking so many different actions that it feels like a lot of noise and there's no victory in sight. And so people start picking at each other. And I get calls and emails from people asking me, why did group X take this action and group Y took that action? Or why aren't groups taking a certain action? Or why did a few groups take this one action, but not every group that we know of took that action? And so I wanted to share two pieces of information that I think might help cut through all that noise. And the first one is this. Over the years, there have been many, many occasions where groups have decided that the best way to achieve a shared end goal is to be taking different strategies. And one reason for that is that because frequently there are different decision makers that need to be targeted. And another reason for that is that the public is not a monolith. An action that I might be willing and able to take may not be an action that you are willing and able to take. And having different types of actions actually can involve more of the public than if you just have one thing going. The second piece of information I want to share, and I think that this is really the most important one, and is this. We've never been here before, right? This is the very first time we're dealing with a near nationwide delisting at a point in time when anti-wolf rhetoric and anti-wolf recovery rhetoric has had more than 2 decades to be percolating. This is the first time we're dealing with a situation where legislators in states like Idaho and Montana feel emboldened by the new nationwide delisting to make their already very aggressive wolf hunting and trapping even more expansive and more brutal and more devastating for wolves. This is the first time we've seen, like we saw in Wisconsin, a hunting group file a lawsuit that forced state wolf hunt to take place. So if anyone tells you that they have the answer on how to stop this, they don't know. We've never been here before. Now, it's clear that if we can get the Biden administration to act, if we can get Secretary of the Department of the Interior Holland to act to reverse the nationwide delisting and to restore protections for wolves in the Northern Rockies, yes, that will be a solution. And every group I know of is writing and having people sign petitions and tweet and contact the Biden administration and Holland and reach out in many, many different ways. But unless and until they act, we all still have to be fighting state by state what's happening in all of these states. And there is no one answer to solve the problems there. So many groups are doing many things. They're all doing their best. We're all doing our best. You are all doing your best. Bad things are happening out there. You know, evil never rests. There's always going to be a Governor Gianforte. There's always going to be a Representative Paul Fielder. These people are out there. But if we were in a room together, I would have you look around and see the people you are with. I would have you take a breath and look at these faces. Because if this isn't inspiring, I don't know what is. If anything will inspire you, that should do it. So the center is rolling out a new way for wolf advocates and wolf advocacy groups to support each other by getting the word out about all of the different actions being taken. And our digital director, Alex Bonk, is here next to tell you all about that.
Thanks, Amaroq. That was inspiring, and I'm really thankful to be here. And I just want to say that, you know, in these times of darkness, just to repeat Amaroq, I think y'all are just rays of light. And what we're going to try to do is focus all of that into a powerful beam and then just win this thing nationwide. And so we've been working very hard, very tirelessly for the last couple of weeks on, you know, a big question, which I think is, you know, how do you keep track of all this information? How do you keep track of all these action alerts? How do you keep track of all the resources and the information that we need to push the needle on this? And I just want to give a huge shout out before I kind of show off our new website to this amazing wolf team and our digital team. This is a massive team effort, and we're just getting started on this. And with that said, I'm going to screen share. Our new website is saveourwolves.org. Please bookmark starting now, share it far and wide, check in regularly. We are going to be working our asses off to keep this updated with everything that y'all need to save wolves nationwide, state by state. I'm going to give you all just a really quick tour of this, but I really want to emphasize that this is a living website. It's a living campaign hub. And it will be constantly changing and evolving as the issue evolves. Just real quick up top, we have my favorite wildlife cam video of all time, some Yellowstone wolves looking at wildlife cam video. Right below that, we have 3 of our most urgent actions. I hope everyone on this call right after it checks out our site, takes these actions if you haven't already. Andrea mentioned 3 of these 4. Our 4th one I'll get to in a second, the state by state one. Right below this, we have some kind of a quick overview of the issue. I know a lot of y'all on this call are very familiar with everything going on. A lot of this is for a general public. We want to pull in everyone we can, everyone that is willing to kind of take action on this fight. Right below that, we have a very important doc called Myth versus Reality, Wolf Recovery. It was mentioned earlier that one of the weapons that are being wielded against us is just misinformation. It's myths. This doc will really kind of put to rest a lot of those. It will give all y'all a lot of really critical talking points to fight back against all of that. Below that, we have the Wolf Conservation Planning Guide that Amaroq spoke about. You can check it out through the website mentioned earlier, or you could also just always get it through here. Right below that, we'll have a section of op-eds and pretty critical articles. Just want to make sure everyone's up to speed on everything in this very fast and intricate issue. And then finally, below that, we have an evergreen action relating to the myths versus facts document above. If you have a Twitter account, all you have to do is come here, click on any of these tweets, or click on all of them. Part of this long-term fight is just disarming the opposition and all of the lies and misinformation that they're wielding to push these anti-wolf laws through. And the more we can just get these facts out there, the more people will be aware of the issue, and the stronger our fight will become. And then a couple of just things not on the site yet. We have the Montana action Andrea mentioned coming up soon. Later this month, we'll have the Wolf Tribal Treaty action up here. A couple of things like beyond the near-term action alerts our digital team has been working on. Some new advocacy tools, particularly click to call and texting. As y'all know, we have a lot of very short action alert opportunities. These public comment periods can be very short. These hearings could be announced with very little time to prepare or join. And so we'll be wielding these new tools we're developing. You'll see them in the action alert section above. But we're going to be expanding our efforts beyond just petitions and public comments. We're going to be sending out actions that will connect you straight to a policymaker's phone line. We'll be spamming people on social media to really kind of build up our narrative. And then finally, we are working on upgrading our state-by-state advocacy toolkit. That will be on this site by the end of the month. And it'll just be a really handy guide to provide everything y'all will need in the state-by-state fights. And we hope that y'all can take that document, that toolkit, and really develop your own on-the-ground grassroots efforts to just bring in more and more people. We see, one of our many roles here is just providing y'all the tools that you need to kind of go out there and just reach the masses and move this needle. And with that, I will hand it back over to Tiara.
Thanks, Alex. That is super exciting, and it's going to be so helpful to have everything in one place. I want to go to people's questions now, and we'll get to as many of these as we can. If we don't get to your question, feel free to email us. There's a bunch of questions already. When lawsuits are in the works, does that put a hold on killing wolves? Andrea, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, and the short answer is yes and no. So technically, if a lawsuit is filed, that does not put a hold on killing wolves. The only thing that can do that is if a preliminary injunction is filed. And those are a tall order and very difficult to win. So to file a preliminary injunction, you have to show that there is irreparable harm that would be done through a hunt or trapping or killing wolves in any way. With a large population of wolves, it's really hard to show that irreparable harm. So right now, the US wolf delisting lawsuit, I don't think, all the groups are talking about it and strategizing. Unfortunately, I don't think that the groups will be filing a preliminary injunction. All it would do is push back the briefing schedule, so we wouldn't be likely to get a decision by the winter, and the chances of winning that type of motion are slim to none. So typically the answer is no.
There's a lot of questions about what Biden or Secretary Haaland could do. Could Biden use executive action to protect wolves, or have they done anything yet to protect wolves?
Do you want me to say something first, Andrea, and then we can chime in? So one of the things to realize is that this rule was put into place by the previous administration, and it became final and effective January 4th, before the new administration took office. If that rule was still pending, like there was still the 60-day period between when it was announced and when it became final, if Biden had taken office in that period, he would have legally been able to do something like reverse the rule. But because it had already become final and already was into effect, that was no longer an option for him once he took office. So at this point, there appear to be a couple of options. One is that we and other groups asked the Biden administration as soon as he got into office to review a slew of rules that were put into place by federal agencies under the Trump administration. And one of those rules we asked that he order the responsible agency, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, to review was that federal delisting rule. They are reviewing it. They have not yet given a response to that. And basically the review we're asking them to undertake is to go back and look in light of what the law says and what the science shows, to realize that that rule never should have been put into place, that it's wrong legally and it is counter to science. So they're still reviewing that. So one option is they could, after their review, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service could itself decide to reverse that rule. Another option could be, now that the lawsuit is pending, sometimes what happens in legal cases is that all the parties begin to have settlement negotiations. What might be agreed to without having to go through the full briefing, the full court hearings. So there is the potential that the Biden administration, either Biden himself or Secretary Haaland, could direct the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to enter into settlement negotiations and reach an agreement that would involve restoration of protections. So that's a second option. I don't know if there are any other options short of those two. If you have other thoughts on that, Andrea, chime in, but to the best of my knowledge, those are the two options by which we might see this administration reverse what has happened.
Yeah, I think the third option is they could grant our petition that asks them to restore protections for wolves in the Northern Rockies, at least. So, or they could deny that petition and then we file a lawsuit over that denial. I'm not sure if that will be the case. It depends, if they do deny it, what that denial would be based on. But granting our petition would be another good option for them.
Someone asked how they can start a local campaign to gather advocates who want to save and protect wolves. What advice do you have for people who are motivated to get an advocacy group going?
Some of you might have been on the series of webinars we did back in 2019 under our Ignite Change, Mobilize the Wild campaign. And what we taught people there was how to gather your group, how to gather your local group of people that are activists. So I'll just refresh a couple of ideas from that. Part of it is knowing the material yourself. And that's why we've got this new website up that Alex and the rest of his digital team and the rest of our communication staff have been so amazing in putting together, because those are instant resource materials for you. I mean, those fact sheets are things that you can print out. You can share that with your friends and family. You could set up a table outside some event. If you get permission to set a table up outside a local library or a grocery store, you can start handing out those materials. You can download and print out some of our action items and have people sign those. I guess you could get those sent to us and we could somehow enter them. We figure out how to do that with you. But really it's making sure you understand the issues and then putting yourself out there in public to begin to reach out to people to help them understand the issues. And so we're trying to make that easy to do through these website sources. And yeah, it's a matter of just starting your community. You could put an ad wherever, online, on your own Facebook page, whatever, of some community gathering. Let's all get together for coffee at the local coffee shop. I want to talk to you about what's happening with wolves, and I want to see if you want to be involved. I can tell you there's a group of women in Montana who've reached out to me, and there's like 3 or 4 of them that are going around tabling everywhere. And as she puts it, what a great way to make best friends for life with people that you never knew before, but you find you all have this common cause. And so it's as simple as that. Start from who you know, reach out to a few new people, start tabling, use our materials, start from there.
Yeah, I would say another idea is the wolf tribal video that we were talking about earlier called Family, which you can, find on our website, or promotions for it on our website and links to it. It's a short film, it's only 5 minutes, but, offer a screening of that. Maybe you don't want to rent a place out for $1,000 for such a short film, but if you can get a library to do it for free or cheaply, or, even do it in one of your homes and promote it. And, when people show up for that, kind of share ideas and information and some of the fact sheets and everything that Amaroq was talking about. For our action alerts, you can, print out the text for those and just have lines under it for people that want to take those actions. And, something like that, sometimes a screening of something sometimes can get people out because they're a little nervous walking in the door when it's, we're going to ask you what you want to do. But, watching a film is seems a little more innocuous, but it's a way to reach out to people.
Thanks, you two. Those are great ideas. Sort of a technical question. Do you have to be a resident of a state in order to comment or provide input during a comment period?
No, you do not. I will say in Idaho and Montana, they weigh more heavily sometimes comments from in-state residents. And this is something I should have said earlier too. If you are taking action, often we provide a kind of format letter in there If you are a resident of the state, that if you're sending comments next week to Montana, for example, on the action we'll be sending out tomorrow, make sure you say that in the comments, and personalize those comments in any way you possibly can. It always has more weight that way. So although the states sometimes weigh those more heavily, also getting 100,000 comments from around the country carries a lot of weight too. So you do not have to be a state resident. I encourage you to take those actions anyway.
I just want to add one thing onto that, because you will see sometimes some groups saying everybody should comment, and some groups will say we only want people from that state to comment. And just realize that when that's coming up, there's like different intelligence that people are finding out kind of behind the scenes as to if a bunch of people from out of state comment, is that actually going to make it worse for this one particular action? Are these particular legislators, whatever, going to dig in their heels harder and pass an even worse law? And so if you ever hear someone, and sometimes it comes from us saying, no, in this case, we think that only in-state people should be commenting, that's why. It's because we've gotten the inside information that in this case, it would be bad if outsiders commented. And then in other cases, sometimes it's like, it doesn't matter at this point, it's gotten so bad, everybody's got to comment. And then you've got the numbers that Andrea's talking about. So it's never always yes or never always no. It depends.
Thanks, Amaroq. Someone asked if your petition to the Forest Service to prohibit commercial activities in wilderness is successful, what percentage of wolves in Idaho and Montana would be protected from trapping in the wilderness?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could answer that question. I can't. There's a lot of wolves that move, they're moving in and out of wilderness areas. I think there were maybe 18 wilderness areas. So it's a lot of land that is covered, public land that wolves obviously use. But, if anybody could crunch those numbers and figure out what the percentage is and that's using wilderness areas, that'd be really impressive. Part of the reason that's so difficult is the methodologies that the states use to count wolves are extremely vague. So, it's not like Yellowstone where we mostly know where the packs are, or even in Washington, we kind of know where the packs are. In Idaho, Montana, we know where wolves generally live, but, they take reports from hunters, reports from citizens, and then they, if a hunter reports they saw one wolf, they multiply that by 6 or 7, which is what they consider the average pack size. And, that's how they come up with the population numbers. So even the population numbers, I think, are questionable at best. But yeah, I don't know what the percentage would be.
The wolves are so mobile, as we know, because of the new populations. Somebody asked, if the populations are reduced so significantly, will they still be viable?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is where the science comes into play. Some of you may have maybe attended some of the Oregon hearings when we were trying to stop the state delisting there, and there were concerns about a concept called minimum viable population. How many wolves do you need now to ensure there'll be a wolf population in the future? And part of that has to do not just with the number of wolves, but the number of breeding pairs in the wolves. But there's another concept that's probably even more important that addresses your question better. And that's this concept called the 3 R's of conservation biology. And that's representation, redundancy, and resiliency. And what that means is, in order to have wolves really be viable into the future, to be recovered, you first of all need representative populations. What does that mean? That means if wolves used to live in the mountains and the deserts and the forests, we need wolves back in the mountains and the deserts and the forests. And then you need to have enough wolves that they will be resilient. You need to have enough wolf populations so that if there's something like a disease, parvo, distemper runs through, wipes out a bunch of the wolves, that they can withstand that, and that there's enough wolves to have genetic diversity. That's also what adds resiliency to any species into the future. And then you need to have redundancy. Not only do you need to have enough wolves in places, but you need to have multiple populations of wolves, so that you have what's called a meta population that's made up of smaller populations. And that also is similar to the resiliency factor. That's how they can withstand a stochastic event like disease or severe poaching or something. So I would say that the areas where we have wolves now, there's always a severe threat, first of all, of mismeasured mortality, mismeasured poaching. There have been another number of studies that have come out recently looking at the wolf populations in the Western Great Lakes states, in the Northern Rockies, and in the Mexican wolf population, which showed that the agencies there have severely underestimated how many wolves are being poached on top of all the other wolves that they can confirm that they know were either killed through agency action or killed through hunting and trapping seasons. So these threats are still really a problem. And if we want wolves in more places, like we have an infant population of wolves in Washington state, an infant population of wolves in Oregon, and really infant population in California, they depend on source populations. It's really critical that more robust populations, as has existed in the Northern Rockies, remains robust. If we want to have more wolves spread out in the Midwestern United States, where there is still habitat, like getting into the Dakotas, we need that population in the Western Great Lakes states to stay robust. So these aggressive hunting and trapping seasons, combined with a lot of the poaching that's taking place, some of which isn't even discovered, but scientifically can be estimated to exist, are still really big threats for wolf populations. If you think about it, wolf numbers right now, okay, maybe we have
Amaroq, we're actually over time already. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I'll stop.
So
We
I'm
need
sorry.
more wolves in more places.
We need more wolves in more places, and they're tough and they travel. So we're going to do everything we can to protect the ones that are still out there. And we're so grateful for your help with that. We have 4 live action alerts. A 5th one is going up tomorrow. Check those out. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to our panelists and our digital team. And as always, we're so grateful for your support in this work to save life on Earth. So we couldn't do it without you. And thank you for your time, and go take those actions. Take care.